My mom and my dad.
Your mom and dad?
My mom and my dad.
Okay.
So you called the police, but at that point you had already decided.
We had decided not to.
You weren't going to say anything.
We had decided that our feeling was not, we'll just explain what happened and it'll be okay. We were very stunned, and we felt that we would go to jail, obviously, and we, it was a selfish reason to just not want to have to go through that.
You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record.
Okay, how is everybody? It feels like we were just here talking about the Menendez brothers just minutes ago. Maybe because we were. So if you weren't with me about a half an hour ago, the Menendez brothers, or some of the Menendez brothers family, had a press conference, and we were watching it together, just the usual bit. I mean, just really hammered home, this is not for political gain. And if you caught my show last night, I think it absolutely is political gain. For political gain, George Gascon is 30 points down in the polls, meaning he's going to be slaughtered by Nathan Hochman, an independent. His tenure as a DA in Los Angeles has been a disaster. I played an interview with Nathan Hochman where he called it a social experiment. Someone in the comments said a social experiment was not a good analogy. It's just been a failure from beginning to end. High crime, criminals let out. He got rid of the entire unit that notifies victims' families when their loved ones are up for parole, therefore for keeping them out of the parole hearings and violating their rights to being at that hearing, at those kind of hearings. So it was just interesting to see Mark Garagos, who represented Claire Bronfman in the Nexium trial for about a minute and a half, along with Michael Avenatti. She's changed lawyers frequently. She's the Seagram heiress, who was really the money behind the Nexium cult. See him represent her. He's very smooth in the courtroom. And it is alleged by the press that Michael Avenatti went behind the scenes to get her a deal, and they were trying to work out a deal. Eventually, she did get a deal with the state and paid millions and pled to 2 puny charges. She has since gotten out early on Trump's First Step Act, I believe. That's my feeling. If she got out early for some other reason, but she was given 7.5 years. She's out now early. She did a very fraction of that time. His daughter represented Keith Raniere in that case, Teeny Garagos. He's also, I believe, trying to get out Scott Peterson. So he's got 2 high-profile murder cases that are notorious, and up until when TikTok was invented, not too popular. Who knows, maybe the next benefit of TikTok fandom will be Scott Peterson. Certainly the Southern California Innocence Project is trying to get out Scott Peterson. And that has been so unpopular that the National Innocence Project has said, oh, no, we don't have anything to do with the Southern California Innocence Project. Oh, no. It's not Southern California. I am wrong. It is the LA Innocence Project. Excuse me. Southern California Innocence Project is the one who just had the big scandal. Another scandal not connected. Excuse me, the LA Innocence Project. So the National said we had nothing to do with the LA Innocence Project, even though they were cheering them on when they announced that they were working on the freeing Scott Peterson with new quote unquote DNA evidence. So the family met and basically hammered home a point about how nobody was ready to believe that the boys were abused. But nobody mentioned Kitty and not her sister. But also Pamela Bozanich, the prosecutor, is also speaking out. And the Daily Mail had a great article. Thank you to listener who brought this to my attention. Menendez brother prosecutor blasts calls for a resentence. Gosh, these ads on the Daily Mail or something. Blasts calls for a resentence amid claims they killed their parents in self-defense. The prosecutor who led the case against the Menendez brothers has slammed calls to release them 35 years after they brutally shot their parents to death with a shotgun in their Beverly Hills mansion. Lyle and Eric Menendez were convicted of the murder of their parents, Jose and Kitty, in 1996 after their first trial was declared a mistrial. The brothers never denied killing their parents by shooting them 14 times with 12-gauge shotguns in their $1 million Beverly Hills home in August 1989 when they were just 18 and 21. Not boys, 18 and 21. Although they're getting younger by the day, they talk about, one of their relatives talked about 6 and 8-year-olds. Someone in the comment section said they're going to become an embryo by the end. I mean, they're just getting younger and younger. Lyle and Eric, now 53 and 56, claimed they acted in self-defense. They said they were lifelong victims of SA at the hands of their father, a high-flying businessman who worked across several industries. Pamela Bozanich, the lead prosecutor at the trial, told Channel 5 documentary titled Murder in Beverly Hills, The Menendez Brothers, that she doesn't buy what they have said. Neither did the jury. So, I mean, she made the point, played a clip of her where she said, are we going to have trial by TikTok and document, which is the point I've been making since the beginning of my podcast. We cannot replace our justice system with trial by documentary and trial by TikTok and trial by public opinion. We have to trust the jury, even when it doesn't come out the way we hope, like in O.J. Simpson, who's seen all the evidence, not just 5-minute TikTok videos and statements from men who've never been cross-examined and letters that we don't know the origin of, or the origin has never been proven. I mean, we're told that it was written 8 months before, but what is stopping someone from writing a letter and dating it and handing it in? And certainly the family is so behind freeing them. The idea these delicate flowers did this thoughtless act of killing mommy and daddy, it's nauseating, the seasoned prosecutor told the show, which aired in the UK on Monday. She added, they lied and lied and lied. They've always been liars. And that's the feeling you get when you really watch the trial. It's only effective for a very short period, and then the seams begin to show. Something's very off with their affect all through the trial, and very off with their affect even when they're testifying about this subject. And they planned the murder out meticulously, and they planned out their defense meticulously. I don't think they thought about the cruelty of what they were doing. I think it was just a means to an end. I don't think they cared about the cruelty. And the tragedy is that there are people out there who don't get that. Instead, she believes the brothers, who have been behind bars for over 30 years, meticulously planned to kill their parents. I was a sex crimes prosecutor. I knew that this was such a great defense because I'm just going to leave those two words out, is the lowest form of life. The way that they constructed the defense, it was in order to get a manslaughter conviction, she said. Manslaughter is an unreasonable but strong belief in the necessity of self-defense. So what they were trying to do is set up a scenario, which was the night of the murders, that they were in imminent danger. So does nobody, I've gotten a lot of pushback and a lot of comments that I don't understand this kind of abuse, even though I've covered 3 trials from beginning to end all about this kind of abuse. And that I don't that's terrible for me not to believe the Menendez brothers, but nobody wants to talk about their actual defense, is that their parents were trying to kill them. They really think that? I mean, I've had people argue they were damaged, that their spending spree of their parents' money after the murder was normal, but nobody really wants to go full all in that their parents were trying to kill them, that they had a reasonable belief that their parents were trying to kill them. Even Rosie kind of goes half in on it and pulls out. So what are we talking about here? And that both, not just Jose, but Kitty and Jose both did this to them. So if you have to believe them, then you have to believe their whole story. You can't just pick and choose what you want to believe of it. They ran out to the car and got the guns and blew up Mom and Dad. She previously said she accepts that the Menendez brothers' father was a horrible man. And that's the quote that's in the Menendez brothers documentary, that she couldn't get anyone except the secretary to say anything nice about Jose Menendez. She said that during the course of the investigation, she couldn't find anyone to say anything nice about Jose Menendez except his secretary. Everyone else had these awful stories about him and what a monster he is. The loss of Jose Menendez, in my opinion, was actually a plus for mankind. Jose Menendez was a really awful man. So it almost sounds like she's condoning murder there. Like, oh, they did us a plus. They did us a favor. Which I don't know if she understands that that's aiding the defense. But she says ultimately that awful man went on to raise 2 sons capable of murder. So there you go. I had no reaction to the Menendez brothers. There was no visceral reaction. I didn't feel like I was in the presence of pure evil. Well, isn't that the point? Didn't people say Ted Bundy? It was like everyone liked him. There were like potted plants to me. Poisonous potted plants, but there was nothing about them I found fascinating. They were just these dumb jock killers. The only reason I'm doing this after 33 years is that poor woman that gave birth to both of them was treated like a doormat by both her husband and her sons, and she was slaughtered like a wild animal inside of her home. Right? She was like on her hands and knees trying to escape. They shot her through the eye. However, she believes the brothers killed their parents to inherit their money. The reason they didn't leave was because they wanted the money, she says. They wanted basically what is called an Italian divorce. You get the money and your partner is gone, and that's what they did. While Pamela, who took over the case from the original lead prosecutor, Elliot Aldeff, and her team pushed for the death penalty, they were given life in prison without the possibility of parole during their second trial in 1996. After the first was declared a mistrial, She said she was disappointed in the result, but knew it was going to happen. For most human beings, the most important decisions that they make in their lives generally are who to marry and maybe what house to buy. But when you're a juror, you're deciding, in this case, life and death. That's a huge responsibility. And having a bunch of people in America watching you do that, that's too much pressure. It's easy to acquit. It's much harder to convict when everyone is looking at you. It comes after new evidence. Says the defense says it's new evidence, hasn't even been evaluated. And that's the problem of having now two defense attorneys evaluating the evidence. They both want the same result. DA Gascon and Mark Garagos both want to release these guys, I believe. I believe what we're seeing is the beginning of a long con of getting everyone hyped up about the release of the Menendez brothers. It comes after new damning evidence in the form of a damning letter was revealed in the shocking Menendez brothers murder case ahead of a review that could lead to a potential resentencing of the siblings. Los Angeles District Attorney George Gascon publicly posted a screenshot to Instagram of the letter written by Eric Menendez to his cousin Andy Cano, in which he alludes to serious and long-term abuse at the hands of his father, Jose. The letter written 8 months. See, not alleged to be written 8 months, dated 8 months. Where's the envelope? And no one actually likes to add the fact that Lyle's letters from prison were intercepted, where he was asking cousins to lie for him on the stand. I've been trying to avoid Dad. It's still happening, Andy, but it's worse for me now. I can't explain it. He's so overweight that I can't stand to see him. I never know when it's going to happen. It's driving me crazy. Every night I stay up thinking he might come in. I need to put it out of my mind. I know what you said before, but I'm afraid you just don't know Dad like I do. He's crazy. It's not, explicit either. Could it be about something else? And what is Eric doing pen paling with his cousin Andy at 17? Menendez's family members and celebrity speakers are set to gather and Rosie was MA at this press conference. She was supposed to appear Wednesday. And he said he was going to address it, and then he never did. I'd love if Rosie had a change of heart. Wouldn't that be great if someone actually got... she actually had a awakening that either the Menendez brothers did something or she found out more information that changed her mind. She actually read the trial transcripts. Wouldn't that be amazing? And we don't ever see her again in this case again, but I doubt it. I think she's too arrogant to do that. A press conference will be held in Los Angeles at 1 p.m., where around 24 family members of Eric and Lyle, as well as actress Rosie O'Donnell, who's organized to speak, will gather at Clara Shortridge Folt's Criminal Justice Center in downtown L.A. A Los Angeles DA spokesperson told Daily Mail, the planned news conference tomorrow is being hosted by the lawyers and the family of the Menendez brothers, or some of the family. See how language is so important in these articles? The DA's office will not attend nor make any announcements. No, that comes later. A decision regarding the Menendez case has not been made. Once DA has made the decision, the family members of the victims and the public will be notified. Oh, they'll be notified. I think it's all happening right now. So right before this event, the Menendez family gave an interview, or some of them. Let's take a look.
Really noticed there was so much more, and it was so bad.
It was.
So Biggie 21 says, hurt people. But do hurt people go out and meticulously plan a murder and take a shotgun to their parents' face and then spend 1.78 million of their money? Do they plan it meticulously? Or is that what psychopathic killers do?
Hard back, 20 years ago. And was it 20 already?
28.
20, yeah. And life goes on, and you go through your day and you think about you think about it all the time. The situation rolls through your mind and you put it aside. But then lately it's been a lot more in the limelight, and so it just brings all those feelings. They're very raw, and I can see it with my mom, with my sister, who are more involved than I am. But I'm quietly raw inside, and it just digs it up when we have these situations.
It was horribly traumatic for me when it happened, because I was part of that family for a good deal of time. Lyle and Eric and I have more of a brother-sister relationship, and
Isn't that interesting that she says I was part of that family? That's some distancing language. That family. I was a part of the family. Instead, she says that family.
it was originally Kitty and I had a mother-daughter kind of relationship that I adored. She was my mentor, but then things changed, and it's really hard to wrestle with that, because I had admired her deeply, and then the last time I was living with them, things had drastically changed already, even then, and that was in 1982, 83.
So this woman has a vendetta against Kitty, they had some kind of issue before Kitty's murder, where she became no longer was her hero. And that's Kitty's sister, who also seemed to have issues with Kitty. So Kitty was a beauty queen. Jose was deeply unfaithful to her. And she was devoted to both her sons and to her husband and treated terribly. And the reason that Eric said that he had to kill Kitty is because she was a witness. She was never away from Jose. There wasn't a time. And also, if they didn't kill Kitty, they wouldn't have inherited the money. That's really the key. And their whole story was that both their parents were going to kill them. You got to believe all of it. And that Kitty was, the family doesn't seem to get their own defense, is that Kitty was doing this kind of thing too, this kind of abuse too. So don't pick and choose what you want to believe. You got to believe all of it. Either they're telling the truth or they're not. Or they're making up a story to cover up for their greedy murder, which they got watching the Billionaire Boys Club. Strangely, about the same thing. And Eric wrote a screenplay all about a son who kills his father for money. What a coinky dink.
So you said you were living with the Menendez family for.
Yes.
How did that all work out? How did that come about?
Well, when my sister got married on August 18th, 1973, a lot of our family came from other places, including Kitty and Jose and Lyle and Eric. And we were at the public swimming pool, and I had heard such great things about Kitty and Jose from my grandmother. My grandmother May, my mom's mom. And so I asked her if I could sometime come and stay with them, and she said that she would ask Jose. And then when we were dropping them off at the airport, she leaned into the car and said, I talked to Jose, and he said yes. So I looked for it. It was like 2 years later that I actually went. And it was between my junior and senior year of high school.
Okay.
I was 16 when I got there, and then I was 17. Lyle was 8, and Eric was 6, I believe.
Are you all watching the miniseries right now that's on?
Well, yeah. Well, Pete and I binged watched it because I just could not sit and watch it on a weekly basis like it was some just a show on TV, because it just hits me too hard. And so we binge watch it, and it's a little easier for me that way. I can cope with the emotions of it, but it's difficult.
Would it be easier? I don't know. Maybe it's just my personality, but I would think it would be easier to watch it in bits and pieces. I know that when I have news stories that really trigger me, either I avoid them altogether, or I, will look at it a little bit, come back. But I guess that's just a personality style. What do you guys
And
think?
it's very true.
It is. They're doing an
remarkable.
amazing job of trying to get out the truth. Unlike the movies that were made many years ago.
Yeah, fantasy.
So in a way, because there's been so many misconceptions, and that this actually does sort of.
Cathartic.
It is.
It is. I have the overwhelming feeling of finally they're starting to talk about the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Were you?
What do you mean? So do you see how the reporter just plays into this? So finally, there's some kind of understanding. Yeah, that's exactly how we feel. Finally, there's some kind of discussion of it. It was so discussed back in 1993. I was watching the trial. Dare I say, I was addicted to this trial. I got into it late, and I watched every bit of it, every bit of media coverage I consumed about the second trial and in between. I was just glued to the story. And the number one subject of discussion was, were they abused? Do you believe them? And many, many women did. This seems to be a con that women are particularly susceptible to. And it did not surprise me when the jurors that voted for lesser charges, strangely, Leslie Abramson, who represented Eric Menendez, Joe Lansing represented Lyle, did a case almost identical to this with a son, Arnel Salvatierra, who killed his father while he was sleeping, Oscar Salvatierra, and got probation for it. They convicted him of voluntary manslaughter. Then Eric Menendez's family found Leslie Abramson for him. And he says, oh, it just was luck. You don't think the family said when they met with Leslie Abramson, she says, I need $1 million. And they said, well, we don't have $1 million in cash. And she says, well, you better get it or these boys will fry. And that, I guess, was the beginning of calling these grown men, 18 and 21, 1989, in August of 1989, when they committed this murder. That was the beginning of calling them boys. And then I think it was from the brainchild of Leslie Abramson, who dressed them up in pastel sweaters. Leslie Abramson, we'll get to her, who has nothing to say, who says this will not be done by petitions. It can only be done by the courts, which I think is foolish. She knows that these campaigns work, these campaigns free killers. You think Adnan Syed would have been let out had serial not existed, even though the Supreme Court of Maryland reaffirmed his guilt? You think the West Memphis 3 would have been let out if they hadn't had 3 documentaries, now 4 documentaries made about them? And $10 to $20 million paid to, was raised to release those 3 killers?
You worried?
I trusted Dick Wolf's production. I just in talking to his people, I trusted it. And the fact that they wanted to get the truth really impressed me.
when you watch this, are there things that you are realizing that you never knew before?
So Dick Wolf, is he the one who does Court TV, who started Court TV? Dick Wolf Productions. Hold on. He's a producer. Because boy, is Court TV, had so many lawyers tell me, like, those lawyers on Court TV, or some of he did Law and Order franchise, which is not bad. Why is the documentary so bad then? Law and Order, Chicago franchise, FBI franchise. Wasn't there another? Who started Court TV? I'll find out while this is playing.
Or things that you always knew but were surprised are being told now?
I don't think anything has surprised me. I think even as truthful as it is, I still think it's a little on the soft side.
I do too.
I don't think it's as horrific as what it really was.
There's so much that they couldn't get in.
You know, the emotions of it are so intense.
Yes.
And I don't know if it's just so intense because of our connection, or if other people that watch it feel that intensity.
We've spoken to Lyle, and Joan, I know you've spoken to Lyle. How is he doing as this is moving forward?
Remarkably well. Diane talks to him every day.
Almost every day.
They really are like brother and sister.
When we first spoke with him, he had gone in with some trepidation about having this come out once again in the headlines. And is he feeling like, okay, this is...
I think it's terrible. I mean, so basically he assured, he needed all their cooperation, and he did it from their point of view. I mean, it's told totally from the defense point of view. I think it's a piece of crap, the documentary. I haven't finished Monsters, but I think Monsters is much better, frankly.
He is so appreciative and just almost like he can't believe it that it's finally getting told the correct way.
Okay, so when the killer is saying it's being told the correct way and has no problem with it, you know that this is a defense mouthpiece. Wow, how disappointing.
Is there something that you hope that people take away from this?
Oh, I can speak to that.
Please.
Because I think that you need to pay attention to your kids. I'm sorry.
And
my sister could have protected her kids. That was her job. And I guess she got beaten down herself or something, but...
No, you're not getting it. This is Kitty Menendez's sister in the middle here, who's in her 90s. Mark Garrigo says at the end, after she has a little Freudian slip about how everyone believed they were abused. they were ready to believe they were abused back then. In her press conference, she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm so nervous." I was like, "Oh, that's closer to the truth." There were so many people bamboozled by this, including me at the time, 1993. It just doesn't, it only works. It's really perfect for TikTok. The Menendez brothers con, you can only believe them if you watch it for a little bit and are fed little pieces of information. It doesn't really work within their story, within the totality of the evidence. I'm just talking about their claims of SA do not work. They only work on the stand and the crying, and then the other brother cries, and it only works when you see it like just a clip of it for a second. But if you watch the whole affect and the whole testimony and you watch their cross-examination, it starts to fall apart. If you're interested, if people can, there is some interest that continues in the Menendez brothers, we can watch it together. Their cross-examinations. They get caught in lie after lie after lie on the stand. That's why Pamela Bozanich said they lied and lied and lied and lied. They're liars. What did she say exactly? What exactly is the quote? all they did is lie, something like that.
Because she did deteriorate. As we talked weekly on the telephone, I could see she became more cynical as time went on. But I had no idea what was going on. She kept it so hidden. And so I just want parents to know, pay attention to what's going on and let somebody know. If you see something, say something. And because what they went through, no kids should have to live through. I mean, people thought the rich kids, they were
just trying to survive.
It was
they were so afraid of, I mean, they believed their dad was like God. If he...
They were so afraid they thought their parents were going to kill them. They were 18 and 21. They didn't have feet. They couldn't walk out the door. They couldn't get a job. They were just so afraid. They didn't know what to do with all their tennis coaches and money. They didn't know what to do. They had to spend almost $2 million in a matter of months of their parents' money after the murder. They had to rob the neighbors multiple times before the murder. And then Eric had to take the fall for it. And Jose paid off his neighbors for the, I assume, for the items that never were returned. Anybody want to talk about that, or the fact that Lyle got kicked out of Princeton University, the Ivy League, for cheating? Speaking of cheating, or his marriage that broke up due to his cheating. I mean, they're just liars. Pamela Bozanich says about them, they lied and lied and lied.
Said something.
And she says, they've always been liars, is what she says. Agreed.
And when he said, well, I'll kill you, you'll die, they believed it wholeheartedly.
He was a scary guy.
Oh, boy.
Yes, more so than even I understood. There's an article that I wish everyone could read.
Right. Especially, they believed that their parents were trying to kill them, especially when they were watching TV and eating ice cream. They thought that was the time it was going to happen. It wasn't that they planned their alibi by going to the Cheesecake Factory in the movies and almost got away with this if Eric didn't confess to his therapist, Jerome Oziel. And thankfully for the Menendez brothers, he had a little bit of a shady past, or else they would really have nothing as a defense. But he said, like, look, it's like, well, why did you do it on Sunday? The maid was off. Why did you have to do it on Monday? Why did you have to kill the mother? Well, we figured she was unhappy with my dad cheating. We just felt, but really they wanted the money. Eric got obsessed with this idea watching the Billionaires Boys Club.
It was in the New York Post, December 13th, 1993. And in it, Bob Rand interviewed a madam who Jose used to order escorts from, and he would want them to be 13 years old. And he would abuse the escorts, and it got to the point where she stopped taking his calls.
Really? Why didn't she come on the stand and be cross-examined? Wouldn't that have been great evidence for the Menendez brothers? Funny she never made it on the stand.
Because he was so abusive to the escorts, she would say, send him. But there's a whole article about it under Menendez murders, I think. And it really is powerful as to speaking to how much of a pedophile and a sick pedophile, it's kind of synonymous.
Tell me what she was like as with you all as siblings. And
She was a little tomboy. She played with the neighbors that she had to play with were the couple of boys.
Growing up, you all sort of were one close family?
I can't say that. My dad left home when Kitty was 3 years old, but he came back repeatedly.
He came back because?
Came back to see my mom for sex. And Kitty kept that from me for years, because I moved out when I was 18. I got married at 17. And I didn't know.
Look at the body language there. Right? Doesn't look like a close knit relationship. Now you understand why. And I think what they tell themselves is, Eric and Lyle are gone, and I mean Kitty and Jose are gone, and Eric and Lyle are still alive. We got to get them out. 34 years is enough. I'm curious if they're raising money too for this cause.
But for the next 20, Kitty told me late after I was in Arizona, she said, well, this is what's been going on. And that had to affect her too.
Sure.
And my brother was 4 years old. Kitty was 3. My brother that just passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
And my dad took him from my mother under false pretenses. He had gotten in some kid trouble at 7 years old, and my dad told my mom that the police said, if you don't let me take him, he's going to go to a reform school. Well, she didn't want that to happen, so she let my dad take him. But that wasn't true. That never really happened. So he ran away from my dad when he was 16. So, and he abused my other brother, Milton, who was 11 when he left home. But Milton was abused by my dad.
Physically beaten?
Physically he was abused, and emotionally. Milton only ever wanted my dad's approval, and he did it. He was Special Forces, Green Beret. He did everything.
But he also ended up being an abusive man.
An abuser to his family, seriously abusing. And so it just goes on.
It's a cycle.
So it was hardly a happy Midwestern family.
And when
was Kitty damaged by this? I mean, as she moved forward, did she have bouts of depression then? Was there any issues? Was she, by all intents and purposes, what we've read is that she was this very vivacious.
She could do anything. She was strong. She painted my mom's house. She could make clothes. She could cover furniture. She was strong. But I think after she met Jose, and she had gone to college for communication and television work and everything, and planned to work in the field. And after she got married and had Lyle, Jose let her know that.
So I'm looking at the family. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. How long is this? I guess it goes right into it just goes on and on and on, the same kind of stuff. Is anyone else bored by this? I'm getting bored by it. It's like the same kind of stuff. Oh, we had problem with that relative, and that relative was abusive, and that relative. Oh, I'm getting bored by it. I'll just be honest. But here, let me show you what it looked like today at the
Good afternoon.
press conference.
My name is Mark Garrigus. I, along with Cliff Gardner, represent Lyle and Eric Menendez. I also have here today Alex Kazarian, Satara Kasim is somewhere, and Gina Glamian, who have been working for the last 18 months in order to get a release for Lyle and Eric Menendez. A couple of weeks ago.
So what's interesting about the website, hold on, let me just see if I can share it if you want, but it says paid for by Justice for Victims of SA. So I've never heard of that organization. Is that it? So did they start their own organization? And are they raising money to free Lyle and Eric from this? So I can't imagine that a reputable organization would stand behind the Menendez brothers. So it sounds like the family made their own charity, if I had to guess, but I don't know for sure. I'd have to do some research for me to do, and I'll come back and let you know. So it sounds like they're making money from this.
And so that you understand the background.
So if you don't know, at a nonprofit, you can pay yourself a salary, et cetera, et cetera. There's all sorts of ways to make money from a nonprofit.
Back in May, we filed a writ of habeas corpus. A judge in this courthouse, Judge William Ryan, issued what's called an informal request for reply. That informal request for reply was to ask the DA to respond to the allegations of new evidence. Part of the two prongs of new evidence were, number one, a letter that was found at Marticano's house that was a letter written by Eric fully 8 months before the killings to his cousin Andy. His cousin Andy testified at the trial. However, in the second trial, was demeaned as making this up or was not true. This letter now shows or corroborates that Andy was telling the truth. The letter describes the abuse. The letter, I believe, was released, at least temporarily, by the DA's office, and anybody who wants it, we can release that as well.
So Lyle said this letter obviously existed, but why wasn't it handed over to Leslie Abramson? It would have been great evidence. Is it because it is considered okay now that the envelope doesn't exist? Because it's so many years later, you wouldn't keep the envelope, and at the time it would be more unusual. I just can't imagine. Does anybody remember back before email, when we used to be pen pals with people? How many people had male pen pals? Not many. And how many people were writing their cousin when you could pick up the phone and call them, especially if you were rich?
The other pillar of the writ of habeas corpus was a declaration by Roy Rosello. The declaration by Roy Rosello is incredibly important for a number of reasons. Number one, Roy Rosello, who was a member or a then member of the band Menudo, was and took great courage at Murray's finding him and talking to him to sign a declaration that said that he too was assaulted by...
And assaulted in a way that no one else in the world says they were, not even the Menendez brothers. So he says that he was in New York, he met Jose Menendez. Jose Menendez took him in his limo back to Princeton, New Jersey, an hour and 15-minute ride by car to his house, not to a hotel room, to his house, where he essayed him in a Bill Cosby way. Now, no other, and this guy came across a lot of, Menudo was a rotating band member. No one else says this. Thanks, Jebby Canfer. I appreciate it. No one else says this. And what are Roy Rosello's connections to the Menendez brothers? What has he been promised anything? Why didn't he speak out at the time when this was so hotly contested? And that's why also they have to further this narrative, like nobody was ready to discuss it. It was so discussed. When the Menendez brothers topic came up, the question was, do you believe them? And lots of women did. They were getting tons of letters and still did. If you listen to the show I did with the lieutenant who looked after the Menendez brothers in prison, he said they were still being treated like celebrities and had fans, even among the staff in prison.
The father, and not only assaulted, but it happened at the house. The reason that's important is that it corroborates what was testified to in trial number one, that it corroborates the fact that the safe place that Jose thought he had was in the house. It corroborates what the family members said was the very uncomfortable.
So it's not that it's sus that Jose Menendez would travel an hour and 15 minutes in his limo with a person he's going to victimize. It just makes the story more believable that Jose Menendez would only do this in his home.
Rule in that house that you could not go down the hallway if Jose was with one of the boys. That was the ground upon which he preyed. We have those two items. Now, there is a separate track. About 3 months ago, we sent a petition, and mind you,
Okay, Murder by Maestro says, I'm male and had many pen pals. Getting a letter back from France felt like sorcery. Okay, but maybe you're a special type. These jock kids are going to be pen pals with their cousin? Come on. Come on.
DA's office, there's been those who have said, well, this is election nearing, blah, blah, blah. We filed this, and the DA has been, Mr. Gascon's office, has been engaged with us productively, strongly, for well over a year. Joan, who you will hear from in about 5 minutes, we actually, because of her young age, she turns 93 next month, we had what's a very rare thing done back in December, which is called a conditional examination. It's a deposition in a criminal case to preserve her testimony. She was there with her.
That's something that was done in the Durst trial. There was a lot of those conditional examinations if you think someone might die. And now she's got new stories. We never heard from her in at least the first trial. I'm still trying to get my hands on the second trial transcripts. She's got new stories that she's willing to do to get her nephews out.
Lawyer Brian Friedman, who represents the family. And what we are also on a parallel track doing is asking, and have been asking, the DA to look at the work they have done and resentence them, to support the resentencing. Now, when I say the work they have done, Lyle and Eric have started, mind you, since 2005, up until the time that Judge Ryan issued the request for an informal reply, have had no hope of ever getting out. Since 2005, they had exhausted all legal remedies. They had resigned themselves to being in prison for the rest of their lives. You could take two tracks on that. You could either just become a hardcore, irreconcilable recidivist, or you could do what they've done, which is create programs, counsel people, develop amazing programs, mentoring people, go to college, get degrees. Lyle, in fact, graduated from the first ever class in June. I watched it, of a combination of UCI along with the Department of Corrections. The first class, Mr. Friedman and I were there, of 22 prisoners who got their BA degree while in prison.
Wow, he's just getting his BA degree now? Really? I understand it's the first class offered in that prison, but what about the other prisons he was in? As my mother says, he works with people in jail, not prison. They have a saying there, which is they're also well behaved. Like they're also so likable and nice in here. But I find it interesting that he says that they were resigned to spend the rest of their life in prison. Isn't that odd for people who feel they have a great innocence claim?
I know a bunch of them, life without parole. So there is an idea that there is redemption. There is an idea with their Green Space project of rehabilitation. I will tell you, in over 40 years of doing this, I have never seen the amazing exemplary rehabilitation and mitigation evidence that we have now presented to the DA's office. We're going to hear from...
Or they were bored in prison and wanted something to do. But he's like, there is an idea of redemption and rehabilitation. Yeah, it's an idea. It doesn't actually have to be true, but it's an idea. Such wordsmiths, right? There's this idea about rehabilitation. It's not saying this is absolute proof that they're rehabilitated and they have been they've redeemed themselves. It's just an idea, guys.
The family today briefly, and I will tell you, I'll give you kind of a coming attraction. I will start with Anna Maria. She will tell you exactly the genealogy. We have over 20 relatives, both Kitty and Jose's sides of the family. This is virtually unprecedented in my practice, and I would dare say it anywhere, that 20 family members on both sides, victims, constitutional victims under Marcy's law, are here to urge the DA to resentence. When, after they're finished speaking to you today, we will then, Mr. Friedman will take them across the street to the Hall of Justice, and they will go through what Gascon does in resentencing, and they will meet with the resentencing unit. They will, under the California Constitution, Marcy's law, they will voice their opinion on why they believe it's time that these gentlemen come home, that they've spent.
Let me just keep calling them victims, family members, and not mention that they're also family members of the killers. It's the only time that I've seen all victims' family members united. Really? How many times have the victims' family members also been family members, coincidentally, of the killers? And if I just keep saying Marcy's law was something I've talked about on this channel with Jane from the National Organization of Victims of Juvenile Murderers, important law. I'm going to talk about these victims are going to go over and talk with DA George Gascon, who is advocating, who's putting up pictures of the Menendez brothers on his Instagram, who coincidentally got rid of the entire department that notifies victims' families when their loved one's killer comes up for parole, to keep them out of the process. He's dying to meet with the Menendez family. These kind of victims' family he wants to be involved with, because they're strangely also the killer's family. I mean, George Gascon is so pro-killer, so pro-convict, so another arm of the defense. He's like, oh, this victim's family is relatives of the killer. My schedule's wide open. When can I meet with them? Ridiculous. I mean, this is just theater. These guys are getting out. That's my prediction. I could be wrong. But from looking at these, this looks like a very carefully crafted long con. So first the victim's family speaks. Right? They're setting up the drama. Will the DA let them out? Will he not? I think Mark Garagos has already said that he's been speaking behind the scenes with the DA. And that there are a few people in the office that don't want them released. Well, what power do they have? He's the DA and he's 30 points down in the poll. They want to get the public totally behind this, so that when he lets them out, it will have the most maximum impact, not just for the movement to limit sentences for killers, meaning look at the Menendez brothers. We let them out. We have to let the next guy out, make a precedent out of it. But also have maximum impact for George Gascon, who's 30 points down in the polls, that he did this wonderful thing. And it also cements the idea that it is a wonderful thing. Look, it's the victim's family doing it. They also happen to be the killer's family, too.
Over 35 years, and I've said it once, I've said it twice, if they were the Menendez sisters, they would not be in custody. We have evolved. It's time. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce Anna Maria, who's going to come up and speak.
Good afternoon, everyone. Buenas tardes. My name is Ana Maria Baralt. I am the niece of Jose Menendez. I stand before you today not just as a member of the Menendez family, but as someone who believes in truth, justice, and healing. Before I get started, I just want to say that I know this is...
I also believe in attention seeking. and I like the way that this reflects on myself as someone who's a truth and justice seeker. I like the high I get from attaching myself to convicted killers and freeing them. It gives me a narcissistic shot in the arm. Oh, the narcissism of this movement is something.
An election season. But for us, this is not a political issue. This is about truth, justice, and healing. On behalf of our whole family, it is my honor to formally introduce our new coalition, Justice for Eric and Lyle. Like so many others, I struggled to process the events of that fateful August day and the loss that I felt.
Right. So Justice for Eric and Lyle. Hold on. I'm just going to remove this for a second and show you guys. Is a lot of money. It looks like very well moneyed webpage. Like about the case, new evidence, sign the... Wait, hold on. Let me here. So when you go to the webpage, you get a full screenshot of them as youngsters, not the creepy pictures of them where he's without the wig, with Lyle without his wig, giving the creepy smile, and Eric a little bit older and less polished. We just have them young and in their pastel sweaters, looking studious in court. And then them as children, new evidence. But I mean, evidence has to be accepted into to court by a judge. It's really not new evidence until it's presented in court and examined. Justice for Eric X banner, Facebook banner, so you can add this to your Facebook. And then you go all the way down, and this is all the press that they've gotten. So they must have a PR person behind it. Maybe someone, I would think, I mean, who's paying for this? Rosie O'Donnell? Who? Paid for by Justice for Victims of SA at the bottom here. So that's some research for me to do. But you can see this is very well crafted, put together, and then you can write DA Gascon, and then it will submit a statement of support right there. It just takes 2 minutes. Where if you wanted to say, don't free them, you'd have to craft your own email. So, I mean, I just think it's a fait complete. I would encourage everybody to write George Gascon and tell him not to release the Menendez brothers. But if I know anything about George Gascon, he has zero morals, and this is what he's been doing since he got into. This is why he's 30 points down in the polls. He's been so over the top pro criminal and pro killer, and LA's really suffered. Crime is up hugely, and he'll point to, the statistics because nobody's getting prosecuted. Be like, well, look, we're prosecuting so many less crimes. It's working. Okay, here we go.
Over time, it became clear that there were 2 other victims there on that day. My cousins, Lyle and Eric. Lyle and Eric would continue to be victimized. They would be victims of a system that wouldn't hear them. And they would be victims of a culture that was not ready to listen. They would be mocked. They would be...
Right. So they bring up like the few places they were mocked: Saturday Night Live and in the Cable Guy movie, believe. Hope I'm remembering that correctly, with Ben Stiller. I thought that's where Ben Stiller did it. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Called cold-blooded killers, left to rot in jail and denied any hope of redemption. If Lyle and Eric's case were heard today, with the understanding we now have...
No, I don't think so. So you see, if you just hear the case that this happened to them, but you have to get the whole, every bit of evidence, how they went. Eric bought the gun using his friend's ID. They planned it out meticulously. They did this weepy 911 call, and then they went on a spending spree. And before this, they were robbing the neighbors. So it points out a pattern of greed. And they weren't children, they were adults. Thankfully, still in our society, even if you say that this happened, so I could be wrong. I happen to think they're lying about this. I don't think Jose was a great father. I think he was abusive as a father, but not in this way. But they were full-grown adults who could have left and made a life for their own. And certainly, when Rosie O'Donnell says they never knew freedom, Lyle had freedom at Princeton University. And what did he do with it? He threw it away by cheating. So they just wanted the quick money. And that's a pattern in behavior that you see over and over again with the Menendez brothers, and also a pattern of lying. So if they can, you get caught lying about one thing on the stand, and also their defense was ridiculous. No one is saying anymore what the brothers said back then, which is that both parents did this. Same kind of abuse. And there's zero evidence. No one has come forward that they experienced anything like this at the hands of Kitty.
About abuse and PTSD, there is no doubt in my mind that their sentencing would have been very different. And yet, despite their circumstances, they have chosen a life of light. Without hope of release, they persevered. They have sought to better themselves and serve as a support and inspiration for survivors all over the world. Their continued incarceration serves no rehabilitative purpose. It's time to recognize the injustice they've suffered and allow them the second chance they deserve. Now here we are, both sides of the family united, sharing a new bond of hope. Hope that with the re-examination of their case, a new outcome will be reached. Hope that this
Both sides of the family, but not all of the family. Some of the family wants to leave them in prison, interestingly.
4-year nightmare will end and that we will be reunited as a family. I am here to ask the District Attorney's Office to take into account the full picture, the truth that was hidden for so long. Lyle and Eric deserve a chance to heal, and our family deserves a chance to heal with them. Please join us. Visit www.justiceforericandlyle.org and sign our petition. And if you'll indulge me, I have 2 more statements to read. The first is from my mother, 85 years old, Terry Baralt, the sister of Jose Menendez. She can't be with us today due to health challenges, but she sent me this. I'm sorry that I can't be there in person to support my nephews, Lyle and Eric. I begin chemo soon and my doctor says no flights. I need to be strong. I wish to make it clear that I stand firmly with this family.
Really? All I can think is somebody better check with their mom, because her mom sounds suspiciously like her own writing, doesn't she?
I am Lyle's godmother, and I love them both very, very much. My nephews have spent 3 decades in prison helping others. I have seen great growth in them. Even the law enforcement supervisors and corrections have written letters to the court asking for their resentencing and release. Millions across this country agree. I implore the District Attorney's Office to end our prolonged suffering and release Lyle and Eric back.
Can we talk about the wisdom of crowds? Can we talk about where millions followed Hitler? Millions were wrong so many times. Millions supported Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey until they didn't. Millions supported Adnan Syed until they learned more and didn't. Millions have been bamboozled by these innocence fraud campaigns. So many wake up and learn more and say no thanks. Oh, I didn't know that. No thanks. Never mind.
to our family. 35 years is such a long time. My prayer is that I live long enough to see my nephews again and to hug them once more. I have another statement, and this is written by a family member of Marta Cano and Andy Cano, that Andy, the one to whom the letter was written.
He was, yeah.
And that was,
Blessed. Sorry, guys. My fault.
By one of Marta's children.
I just wanted to mention Andy Cano, who OD'd on substances, and that Andy who had this letter and did nothing with it. That Andy. Let's look around and smile. That Andy, that special Andy who brought us it's like some sacred document, who brought us the sacred document that might release these two. This is so over the top, the delivery here. You want to go back? I want to go back and see it again, don't you? That Andy. So his mother found this letter. And my feeling about this letter, I'll say it again, is that we know that his letters were from jail or prison where he was locked up before trial, were intercepted where he was asking his cousins to lie for him, were intercepted. And that's the reason why he didn't testify at the second trials. He didn't want to be caught on the stand, with that evidence, like, oh, you were telling your relatives to lie for you. So I think Eric wrote the same kind of letter and passed it to his cousin. I think he was just smarter about it, either passed it to him in a visit or got it to him some other way. But where's and dated it 9 months before the murder. So he know what to say about his alleged essay. So, but where is the actual, I want to see the envelope and the stamp and the date stamp on it. But none of that will be explored because George Gascon is just going to green light that without any real dig into the evidence, because there's no one to uphold this conviction. So now this alleged letter will become fact. And the same thing will happen with Roy Rosello's affidavit. It's never challenged, never has to be cross-examined, never has to be actually looked at like up to, say, compared to if Jose Menendez had a calendar that still exists. Isn't it interesting? Isn't it easy to make these allegations so many years after the fact when it can't be disproven or examined? So this is really just a show to rally up the true believers and get more true believers on board. But I find it really interesting that Rosie O'Donnell didn't show up.
And I love them both very, very much. My nephews have spent 3 decades in prison helping others. I have seen great growth in them. Even the law enforcement supervisors and corrections have written letters to the court asking for their resentencing and release. Millions across this country agree. I implore the district attorney's office to end our prolonged suffering and release Lyle and Eric back to our family. 35 years is such a long time. My prayer is that I live long enough to see my nephews again and to hug them once more. I have another statement, and this is written by a family member of Marta Cano and Andy Cano, that Andy, the one to whom the letter was written. This is written by one of Marta's children. Thank you for giving our family the opportunity to express our thoughts during this pivotal time in Lyle and Eric's case. Our family's tragedy has always been very public and has been extensively covered by many media platforms. Marta and Andy Cano would have wanted to speak today, but unfortunately they are both unable to do so. Marta is in memory care, but she spent decades supporting Lyle and Eric. Sadly, we lost Andy shortly before his 30th birthday, and we miss him every day. Both Marta and Andy deeply loved Lyle and Eric. They both believed in justice, but they also believed in a second chances and forgiveness. It has been 35 years since this happened, and we feel enough penance has been paid. It is time for them to be released and for all of us to move on and continue healing as a family. Again, if you want to help, please join us at justiceforlyleanderic.org and sign our petition. With that, I'm going to be followed by several members of the Anderson family. First will be Alan Anderson. He's the nephew of Kitty Menendez. Of Kitty Menendez. And the second will...
Right, she doesn't even know her own relatives. I mean, these are people like they just went out. I mean, we can look at this a little later. I'm going to end it here. I've been going for a long time today. I did a couple hours going through this actual hearing, and I'm starting to wane a little bit. So we can return to this another day, but just be aware of what you're seeing. This is a show. This is how Innocence Fraud works. One part of it. It's very much like theater. And we're seeing the beginning of theater that is meant to promote the idea that we should have shorter sentences for even our most heinous crimes, that 15 years is enough for murdering someone, meaning 15 years for Jose, 15 years for Kitty Menendez. And I'm going to end the way I do so often with the Menendez brother episodes with my song that I wrote about the Menendez brothers. We did it for the money. Have a great night, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern.
Ice cream on the table, TV on the tube. Give us the victim label. Everything you heard is true. Your mom and dad, the sinner and tips made us blue. Crack peelers, wells, is it boo-hoo or hoo-boo? We did it for the money. We consoled ourselves with Rolex watches, hand-tailored suits, ran our hand over designer fabric swatches, broke into the computer, rewrote that will. A Jeep Wrangler for a lady, paid with bloody dollar bills. We did it for the money. Kim K believes us, so does Rosie. Oh, strangers weep, we had it so bad. It's the Menendez Bro Show. Just release us from prison. We'll play victim so well. Squeeze out some tears. The truth we never tell. Looking for suckers to manipulate emotions. Someone with empathy, enough to fill oceans. Just break these prison bars. They'll appear on your YouTube show. Lie and sob and wink. If you know, you know. We did it for the money. We did it for the money. We console ourselves with Rolex watches, hand-tailored suits. Ran our hand over designer fabric swatches. Broke into the computer, rewrote that will. A Jeep Wrangler for a lady, paid with bloody dollar bills. We did it for the money. Kim K believes us, so does Rosie. Oh, strangers weep, we had it so bad. It's the Menendez Bro Show. Just release us from prison. We'll play victim so well. Squeeze out some tears. The truth we never tell. Looking for suckers to manipulate emotions. Someone with empathy, enough to fill oceans. Just break these prison bars.